My name is Micah Sexton. I am the owner of Sexton Studio, and today I'm going to share about a project that I've been working on in Moab, Utah. So this is a boathouse in the desert, the case study for a central model. That's a picture of me, and that's a building that I built over the summer behind me. It was designed in SketchUp and built the whole thing myself, Core 10. Anyway, project for another day, but ultimately that's going to become my office. I see myself as a pretty hands-on designer and really think through the details of what we're building. A little bit about Sexton Studio. I work with my wife, Emily, who's here in the crowd. She is a landscape architect and planner, and I run the architecture side of things. Our work focuses on experiential architecture based on environmental context. We forge holistic design from the land, structure, and true building materials. Emphasis on context. A little bit about me and my history. So I grew up in Colorado, and my first job was for an architecture firm in Boulder, small 3-person office. And when I got hired on, the first project they handed to me was Spider Skiwear's headquarters, which was pretty rad. Simultaneously, my boss handed me a book. It was about SketchUp and LayOut and said, hey, really interested in using this workflow. I want to get away from doing AutoCAD and not really interested in doing BIM or Revit. So I took it and ran with it. We designed that project. That was a 40,000 square foot office space. I went on to do McKinsey & Company's offices in Denver, also in SketchUp and LayOut, and Honeybee Robotics in Longmont, which I think is a 80,000 square foot facility, all SketchUp and LayOut. Later on, I landed a job at Cutler Anderson Architects out on Bainbridge Island. And when I got there, I was handed a really extremely complex project abroad. It was a renovation project of a 3-story building that was leaning, and the walls were like castle walls, really thick at the bottom and tapered as it went up. And they also handed me a BIM model that had been created that was just a total basket case. So push came to shove, and I ended up bringing SketchUp to that office and showing them how we could actually model all the custom things that the architect Jim Cutler wanted. So really intricate windows and details, and just about every tile and structural column and air register was all modeled in SketchUp and LayOut. So just saying that to show that even these high-end architecture firms have a need for SketchUp, and it's not really being tapped into. So enough about me and my history, and I want to share with you the project. So this is the site that I've been working on. It's not far outside of Moab, maybe 10 minutes or so. And it's an irrigated hay field valley surrounded by cliff walls and kind of, these beautiful rock outcroppings and a true canyon rim. There's an existing pond that you can see out there and a creek that runs through the middle of it. The pond itself is fed by a natural spring, which is kind of an oasis. This is truly in the desert. Right now we're in Las Vegas. This is the far west side of the Great Basin Desert. Moab, Utah is on the far west side of the Great Basin Desert. So, and they call it the Great Basin Desert because everything in that environment or within that bowl all drains within itself. Moab itself is probably 6 hours outside of Denver. So I'm in Evergreen, Colorado. I'll come out to the site relatively frequently and have done a lot of work in the field here. This is another view. So it's a stunning place. It's one of the rock outcroppings, and again, the existing pond. A little bit about the sailboat. The owner of this property, he bought a house, and I guess the previous owner of that house had a sailboat sitting in the driveway and didn't take it with him. So the owner was like, hey, what am I going to do with this? So he put it out here in this pond that's maybe twice the size of the room that we're standing in right now. It's like a 1 acre pond. So, I can't say that they do a whole lot of sailing, but they'll kind of push it out there and, sip on some margaritas and get some sun and jump off into the lake. So this is a really cool spot. Him and his family love to go there and, just spend time with their family and do all the things that you'd want to do at a lake. This is a rock outcropping looking the other way. So just some really beautiful geologic features. These are all sandstone. The irrigated hayfield, you can see little maybe black dog here on the left-hand side. That's my border collie Panda. I got another picture of him in here. He goes with me on a lot of these site visits. And so anyway, minor side note. Another thing that's really unique about this property is that it actually has a bunch of caves on it. I believe they're all man-made from different times. I think some date back to the 1800s. This one's quite a bit newer. This one actually punches out the side wall of one of the cliff faces that we were looking at. And the owner, I've been working with him, and he wants to put a balcony out here. And I would love to do a 3D scan of these caves because there's some other elements that we're talking about doing, some whiskey tasting, and he does some special events in these caves. So here's the same cave that we were looking at down from the other side. So it's probably 25, 30 feet off the ground and really great. I mean, just a cool opportunity for views and the experiential, we'll call it architecture. It doesn't exist yet, but experiential architecture of this place. A few other caves. So he uses these for storing his cars, and he also harvests hay at this field and stores the hay there. We're going to put some big doors over the top of these to seal them off. He's had some issues with bats, so we're working on that currently. And then this is another cave that you can actually drive in. So I believe Jeep Wrangler unveiled their Moab edition of their latest and greatest Jeep Wrangler, and they filmed it coming out of this cave. So that's my Jeep Cherokee. It's I love it, but it's kind of a classic these days. And anyway, that's my border collie Panda sitting in the back seat. Another thing that this site has is petroglyphs. Pretty interesting if you've ever spent any time in this area anywhere here on the Southwest. There are petroglyphs and clay shards and remnants everywhere of previous civilizations. Really incredible. These are things that we want to preserve and protect for generations to come. So these are some really cool ones. I have no idea what they mean. These little Teletubby guys holding basketballs or something. Another view, some really great cottonwood trees. There's those caves in the back. And again, a cliff rim that kind of lines this whole valley. So this is another shot. The owner decided to add another irrigation pond to the site. So he had just built this and filled it with water. He's still got to put a clay liner in there, make sure that it will hold water. But this was his very first test. We're going to put the buildings that I'm going to show you here at this location. This is where the primary house is going to be, over where that dog is in the background. And again, just some really incredible views that we want to capture and accentuate through our architecture. When we started the project, we didn't have any topography or a survey to go from, so we actually used GIS. This is Global Mapper. Don't like using GIS, but yeah, I know just enough to get done what I need to get done. And after actually going to a couple sessions here at this conference, I'm excited to streamline this process and make things a little bit more efficient. But essentially, this is a LiDAR scan. Was able to cut 1 foot contours or 5 foot contours, whatever I needed from it. And then a lot of jurisdictions have free GIS data that you can download and use. So state of Utah has a bunch of national parks and all kinds of mining that happens there in that state. They have a ton of GIS assets. So I was able to get hydrology, roads, parcel boundaries, pretty much anything that was really critical. You can also get well locations if you're interested in that. So from that information, I was able to do some site analysis. So this image is capturing the heating degree days of this particular site and locating where the views are, looking kind of up the canyon. There's some views to the La Salle Mountains, which would be east of this site. And everything in architecture is access to views and access to natural light and maybe a little bit of water. So from that topography that I generated, I brought it into SketchUp, and we use this for our site analysis. So this is a solar shadow study. So not survey contours, but pretty good. And we turn the shadows on at different times of the day and at different months. So this is a plan orthographic projection of those contours, overlaid the roads. Those are buildings, new and proposed. And then these are shadow studies of what's happening across the surface of the earth throughout different times of the day and different months. So we picked key times of the day, key times of the year, and this was all done just native SketchUp shadow tool. Let's see. So let's see, go to my next slide. Using that information, we extracted them or exported them to JPEGs, and we mapped out. So just like I was telling you, 10 a.m. January, 10 a.m. April, 10 a.m. July, 10 a.m. October, all these key times of the day at the solstice and the equinox months. And this helps us see what's going on there. We want to put a house in an ideal location that's not going to be in the shade all the time in the winter and not going to be in the sun all the time in the summer. And this is a composite of those overlays. So there's a lot of things that can be understood from doing analysis like this. And for us, it kind of clarified and solidified what we understood of the site. So kind of identified three key locations for the primary house. And this has evolved as we went through the project. This is an early site plan that we did. A lot of this is duplicated in SketchUp. This particular image was generated in Photoshop, a composite with aerial image in the background. And the actual site plan has evolved quite a bit since then. Which brings me to the architecture. So this is the Boathouse, and I will show you some more about that. It's also, this is the Boathouse, and we have 3 buildings on the site. So primary residence, which is the Boathouse, it's where the owner, his wife, and his 2 kids are going to live. And then this is the shop. So he has an excavator that he wants to do maintenance in and keep it nice and warm in there so he can work on it in the winter. The lower level of this is for storing vehicles and boats. And then there's also a wood shop on the other side. And I'll show you some of those things here in a little bit. The third building is a pavilion. This is on the existing lake that we were looking at. And so no real proper amenities in terms of bathrooms or anything like that, but kind of everything that you'd want at an awesome hangout spot. So wood burning fire pit, there's a grill, and this dock that you could put kayaks and canoes in, and kids are going to be running off this dock, jumping into the lake, and running back around. So let's talk about the central model. So for this presentation, I'm going to focus on the Boathouse primary residence, but it's the same process that I used for all 3 buildings. And this is how I do my construction documentation. ultimately. So we're going to dive into the details a little bit, but I want to show you the design and design intent first before we go to that. So this is a fly through. So it's got a 2-car garage. There's a basement level with clerestory windows that look out so they get natural light. The master bedroom, a great room with windows on both sides. We got some excellent views of this property, and we want to accentuate that through our building forms. This big open area at the front that's kind of like a patio, we're calling the flyway, and it's got a hot tub that hangs off the side and axial relationships to the inside with a fire pit beyond. Also really try to line things up with corridors. What is a corridor and how do you define it? This happens to be kind of like a dock. There's some influences of what a boathouse might be, even though this happens to be a piece of architecture. It's influenced by what a boat might look like. So that water is not a waterfall; it's actually a downspout. So we're going to have a gutter collection system, and it's just going to drop right into that and kick out. So we're in the desert. When it rains, we want water to be celebrated, and I'm a huge fan of rain chains and these water drain kicks. And back to the garage. The water here at the front is a rain garden. So now I'll show you a little bit more of intimate interior views. These are looking out. This is looking into the kitchen and living room. Big steel door that separates the living space from the bedrooms beyond. And again, everything's on axial relationships. And we'll talk about that, but all these views, these openings line up with the rock outcroppings beyond and some of the cave openings that I was showing you earlier. And we're going to get to that. I have cruciform columns with wood packed out. Now I'm going to talk about the model itself. So I draw all my framing members. This is the structural steel, cantilevered, and the first floor, and we're just moving our way down through the model. Floor system, this is the basement level, and I'm going to pause it real quick. This is SketchUp. This is the exact same model that we were looking at, and I am building the bases for my orthographic views that are going to be used for my documentation. A lot of you guys know exactly what I'm looking at, but for those of you that don't, this is what I'm going to be bringing into layout and labeling and documenting. And starting the basement, we're going to work our way up. So this is the first floor, and now we're moving up to maybe a lower roof plan. This is the framing of that ceiling, clerestory. Little note here. So I use some of Nick Saunders' pointers. This is a roster view. I don't do roster views with all of my layers turned on, mostly because I don't want to make the contractor print everything in color every time. Sometimes colors can get a little bit murky and muddy depending on what you're showing. And so for me, I try to have more industry standard CAD documents that are black and white, and then I'll use kind of like these gray hatches behind to accent what I want to show. So this is a view that's going to become a roster view in my layout. And right now we're looking at the beams that are important for framing. And we'll see that here in a little bit. So more framing plans. This is the high roof framing plan. And then the total roof plan. Moving on to elevations. This So I really like, set these orthographic projections. I will also do an option to have raster images in the background, and I'll set that as a layer so that, I've had enough times with contractors where they say, I don't want to deal with color printed plans, but color printed plans, especially in PDF form, are super helpful for them and for the owner, or if you have like a design review board. So I'm of the opinion of, I'm so tired of hearing about it, I'll just give it to you all of the ways. So I'll stack a raster image in the back for a certain PDF set, turn off that layer in layout, and then only show the black and white CAD-ish lines. Again, this is all SketchUp, no AutoCAD, but that's what contractors are used to seeing. So yeah, these are my elevations, and now we're going to go through sections. So my camera scene stays the same, and I am just sliding through the building that tells the story to the contractor about how this thing actually gets put together. Another little note is I draw my own hatches in SketchUp. I've had all kinds of issues trying to figure out how to do that in layout. And I know, Nick Saunders, he's like, it doesn't even matter. We don't even need to see insulation for it. I've had all kinds of issues at the county with them rejecting plans because that's where they want to see them. And if you've ever tried to permit anything in a city like Denver, Denver is an extremely rigid planning department, and they will not change the way that they see things for you. So I have to provide it. So I'm actually, this is SketchUp geometry. I created my own little hatch pattern, and it's on its own layer, and I'm just layer managing. It's actually not too bad of a workflow. It's a workaround. I wish there was a better way. Seems a little bit silly, but then again, so is Revit. So, yeah. And a little bit about that. I will do anything that I can to not have to work in Revit or AutoCAD. And so I found a lot of workarounds, things like exporting to CAD 2D line work, etc. Happy to share those things with you guys, maybe at a later date. So let's see. Show you the next video. And this one is in layout. So this is what my drawing sets actually look like. I have my title block in there. I like to have an image at the front that shows what it is that we're building, and then a table of contents. There is nothing automated about anything that I do. I am very old school and primitive, caveman compared to a lot of you guys. But that's how I work. I would rather do it that way rather than troubleshoot and try to figure out why this plugin thing is not working. But with that said, I've seen some pretty great things at this show, and I'm excited to implement things and streamline them and hopefully make my processes a little bit better. Let's see, let me back up real quick. This is a area takeoff calculation, super helpful for a contractor. They can see impermeable surface area, how much of the space is conditioned. Somebody could easily take these calcs and plug them in for a manual J calculation, which helps size mechanical systems for the rooms that we're working in. So we have about 12,000 square feet of space on this project. This is my layout file with my floor plan. So yes, I use hatches. Those are door tags. There's nothing BIM about them, but that's okay. Again, any excuse not to have to work in Revit is fine by me. So I'm happy to do things the old school way. So that's my vector base. I don't have a raster in here. I've set up my styles. I like to read the gray wall pochets for walls. And this has kind of all the detail that a contractor would want to see. Let me back up here. I also do built-in options. So yeah, the geometry, I'll set up a layer with option A, option B. So right now this is an alternate for the floor plan with two bedrooms upstairs as opposed to one big master. And this is something that might be phased for this particular construction. The owner's got a young daughter, and it might be better for her to be living upstairs rather than down in the basement until she's, a little bit older. Yeah, there's those dimension tags. They tend to blow out on me, but I'll admit I am stuck in 2021. So again, I know I'm a caveman, and there are probably some better dimensioning systems out there nowadays. And I am going to upgrade. I did it once and it scared me a little bit. So I've just been very heads down. I know what I know, and, have been using those processes that work for me. So these are framing plans. Super helpful. A lot of times you'll have a structural engineer on a project, and there's redundancies of you drawing something and then they're going in and they're drawing something. I'm at a point now where I tend to draw more detailed drawing sets than my structural engineers. So they're like, hey, you know what? You're going to do all the drawings anyway. I'll just review and seal your plans. So that's what we're looking at. The architecture set is the exact same thing as a structural set. And that is really helpful so that you don't have any discrepancies between the two drawing sets. Graphically, they're all the same, and the information is the same. You don't have to have a QA, QC between the two. And that's one of the ways that you can really save time in a project. Where does the time go? And it's stuff like that. Oh, so this is the raster view of the beams that I was showing you earlier in the SketchUp model. Let me back that up real quick. So I want to highlight the steel of this building, and then the wood framing I'm stacking on top. Let's see, I was so close. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so the gray lines there, those are the steel beams. Everything that I do is drawn anatomically correct. So if it's a W12 by 22, that's the size I-beam that we're seeing in our SketchUp model. And then we're stacking a vector view on top. And then onto elevations. So I do 1/8 inch scale for overall elevations, and this is such a big building, I had to break it up. I like to work in quarter scale for just about everything, floor plans and sections, elevations. This is really the only way you can get the level of detail that you need for a building like this. These are hatches in layout. Try to keep all the geometry in SketchUp, with the exception of something like French drains. And again, these hatches, I've worked out a system that works for me, is to have them as a layer, my OB hatch layer in SketchUp. So turning everything off, turning it back on. I got datum levels, everything you'd want to see. And I've heard a lot of times, I show this set to people and they're like, oh, you did this in Revit. It's like, no, I didn't do this in Revit. This is all SketchUp. And they like, lose their minds when they hear that. Like, that's not even possible. And so showing you guys right now certainly is possible. And these sets rival Revit drawings. And, Revit's really great at documentation, and the BIM side of things, the wheels fall off when it comes to the actual architecture. And maybe that's part of a greater conversation, but we are seeing that manifested in our cities with the buildings that we're building. I could look at a building and say, that was done in Revit, and you can tell because the roof lines, they're just not working in 3 dimensions. And I've had conversations with a number of you guys. People aren't, they're just not able to visually see what the problems are because they're working in 2D orthographic views, plans, sections, and that's it. Well, this is 2024. We have 3D, which we're the first generation ever to have this capability. And it's not only the future, but it's now. And 2D orthographic projections are going to go away once we streamline the automation process. So we're going to have 3D models, skip all the construction documentation phase, and it's going to go right into a robot that's going to 3D print these structures and assemble them. And we might see that within our lifetimes. Let's see, I think this is on a loop. So go to the next one. Yeah, this is just a PDF printout of what I was showing you. So again, these are what my sets look like. I have perspectives at the front, probably the first, 10, 15, sometimes 20 pages that show these. And this is what your contractor is going to be looking at, because this tells the information of what it is that we're building. The sections, elevations, good for area takeoffs, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. And SketchUp just absolutely crushes at the 3D aspect. All the stakeholders know exactly what we're designing: clients, contractors, subcontractors, and more importantly, you as the designer. So framing 3D perspectives. This is a really intricate area, so trying to figure out what's happening here in terms of the foundation work and the beams. And these things can, you can keep going into greater and greater detail. Sometimes those get broken out into other smaller 3D models. I'm not going to get into detailing today, but we can certainly talk about that. I have some work that's posted in the art exhibition hall with some detailing that I've done. Go check it out, and I'm happy to share with you how I did that if you're interested. Some more little detailing things. Here's that rain kick. And again, the plans. I think I'll just kind of push through these. You've seen most of them. Everything's labeled. I like to have multiple framing plans as you go up the whole building, so there's no confusion. I want to have really clean and accurate drawing sets. If I can avoid doing RFIs, then that is my goal. If I can do a project without any RFIs, I've done a good job. On the opposite end of that spectrum, if I'm getting RFIs, it means I missed something. So that's my goal. I'd rather be working here in SketchUp and LayOut rather than Bluebeam managing RFIs and the quote unquote management side of a project. And again, that's where the time goes. So this project's it's at a design development stage. I haven't done the detailing again, but we're about to go into that with the owner and getting all that sorted out. So that's why I'm not showing details at this point. This is door and window schedule. Again, this is all rudimentary, primitive, caveman stuff in terms of the labeling. And yeah, it takes a little bit of time. You just do it once, be really thorough about it, make sure the design is pretty well set. And I would much rather do this, spend a half day working on this over working in Revit or ArchiCAD or some hybrid of all those. It turns into a monster really quick. Door and window elevations, really helpful to have for the contractor. I can't tell you how many questions I get about, how big is the door? Where do you want the mullions? And if I draw it here, I can point this to this drawing and say, go check out 8.2. That will tell you everything that you need to know. So saves me time. Oh, and these are some mood boards and some things about detailing and materials. So this is kind of our process. Which brings me to our workflow structure. Let's see. Let me check real quick. How are we doing on time? Oh yeah, we're doing good. All right. So this is my workflow model. It took me a little while to figure out how to represent this, but I think this is it. This is how I do things. So the boathouse that we were looking at earlier, architecturally, or the architecture is my focus of that boathouse. So that is my central model. And I show this on the left-hand side as this endless loop of what happens in every single project. So there's design at the very beginning. That goes into the central model. We model it in real time with the owner, and we get instant graphic communication. So what that means, owner sees exactly what you're drawing. He knows exactly what you mean. So there's the client, the contractor can see that, and you can see it as well. So I would argue that doing this workflow makes you a better designer because you're iterating and you're solving those problems internally and having those internal conversations, and you're having those conversations with the client. So that's happening with the central model, and it's not this linear progression of schematic design development that all the architecture and design firms try to tell you it is, because this loop is happening throughout the life of a project, and it creates all kinds of issues with a linear progression model that is so often used. So with SketchUp, we can do that. The model, everything is modeled perfectly, and that is kept up to date throughout the life of the project. In terms of leaking and updating, I think most of you guys probably know how to do that. But you can import this into other models. So the architecture model into something like a context model. And I'm going to show that here in a little bit. If the architecture model changes, you can reload it and update it. If you change the roof forms or whatever in the context model, and it keeps the context model lighter because you don't have all the scenes and everything that you work through for your construction documents. So anyway, enough about that. Yeah, central model. I'm showing something like Sapphira here for building analysis. It could be other programs or other types of analysis. So that one's sort of a placeholder. The central model can be used for many different things using that same linking and reloading process. And with this building, I actually would love to do some energy analysis. So if anybody is here from Sapphira, come find me. Would love to talk with you. This is the same model that we're using for photorealistic renderings. I don't have any to show at this time, but they will come. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about the new AI features that I was seeing yesterday with the PBR graphics. And rendering is a profession unto itself. Mad props to everybody that does it. I'm just focused on design at this point, and I just haven't had enough time to do it. Also, central model to consultant backgrounds. So that's a reason why a lot of people in the industry don't use SketchUp, is because they say, I can't extract CAD that's usable for my structural engineer and my MEP. I've actually developed my own process for exporting layers from SketchUp. Conversation for another day, but it's not the, there is some time involved with setting that up, but I've figured it out and it works really good. I've used it for all those projects I was showing you earlier. Also, central model to the drawing set, which is layout. So that is constantly being relinked the whole way through. And again, that design cycle of design into the central model and graphic communication is happening throughout the whole life of the project, cradle to grave, and sometimes even after the project has been built. So why do we use a central model? 3D is the most effective form of design communication. It transcends language, education, and experience. Everybody sees the same thing. The model is also an asset. Don't throw it away. Track changes throughout the life of the project, cradle to grave. I've seen it so many times in firms. They invest heavily in this beautiful SketchUp model. Everything is relatively well figured out in schematic design. And then they say, okay, pencils down. We're done using SketchUp. Throw it away and let's rebuild the whole thing in Revit or AutoCAD or whatever. And that's like could be months worth of work. And I see it happen more times than not, actually. So I'd say, hey, no. The model's an asset. Keep it, use it, and use SketchUp and LayOut. The third point here is time and efficiency. The workflow is streamlined. There's no need to change the design in multiple places or switch programs. And there is something to be said about that, of switching between programs, the time it takes to boot those software programs up, and the mental taxation on you of thinking through, what's the interface? What are the buttons that I need to use for this particular program? Again, where does the time go? Worked in a number of different offices, and I can tell you right now, that's it. that's where the time goes. So fourth point here, there's more time for iteration. It means that the design has been studied and evolved. Clients are happy, contractors are happy, you as a designer is happy. Some really simple rules for modeling. I use perfect modeling and geometry, and I would like to start a new movement here at SketchUp Basecamp for hashtag no tildes. Tildes are your measurement box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. If you're sort of plus or minus, a foot or 6 inches, whatever it might be. So I'd say no. If it's 6 inches, let's draw it as 6 inches. Also, perfect layer management. Everything gets assigned to a layer. I use a hierarchy layer system. I know that there are better ways, and you guys all have plugins and some really good ways of doing it. Again, I'm primitive, and whatever works for you, use it. I would also say scene and style setup. That one's relatively obvious, especially going from SketchUp to LayOut, but figuring out the styles that work best for you, cleaning them up, and using them over and over and over again. It's almost mindless at this point, and it has saved me a ton of time. And the fourth point that SketchUp and beyond is do it right, or you'll do it thrice. So, there's truth to this, and there really is no other way except doing it correctly. So some issues with convoluted workflows. So I touched on this: time lost in translation, navigation, and boot up time. There's computer and mental processing time associated with that. I think we've all been there, and the industry, the architecture industry uses these programs and uses every single one of the programs. And again, where does the time go? Second point here, we are the first generation to have 3D. It's time to rethink and simplify the design process. Really excited about this. The architecture world has been in orthographic projection since the Egyptian times. And that is a really great way to communicate the construction of a project, but it has no tangible feeling of the experience of that place. So I'm excited to get away from 2D ortho views. They're super important for construction at this point in time, but as far as I'm concerned, they're almost totally irrelevant for design. The third point here, central model is not BIM. BIM performs the labeling, documentation aspects of design. I know that there's information that can be embedded in components, but it lacks the quick iterative tools to graphically communicate. And I've seen this over and over again where people are so excited about BIM because of the door and window schedules, and they've thrown out the architecture as a result of that. Really great projects have gone into the dumpster from this and never been built because of this. And BIM is currently the way that the whole world works. I'm just stunned that anything even gets built. So anyway, enough of the meat and potatoes of the project. Let's get back to some design stuff. So this is the shop. So this is a wood shop here at the front, an big garage bay for excavator beyond. We have more of those. These are airplane hangar doors that actually pivot out, and we have a fire pit with a balcony, and all these things look out at this awesome site that we were looking at earlier. So car storage, boat storage down below. All these doors open up. I'm actually really interested in using Building Instructor to automate these things. Right now I just have 2 layers, open position and a closed position. It's been helpful, but would be kind of cool to streamline it. So this will all be weathered Corten steel, and I really wanted this building to fit into the site with the grading of it. So I'll show you some more images here in a little bit of that. This is inside the main shop bays. So that's a 14-foot door that opens out. They're hydraulically operated. We've used them on a number of projects in Moab before. They're pretty rad. Some sliding steel barn door sliders. This is the wood shop. There's a bathroom beyond, stairs that go down to that lower level, and then an outdoor patio with fireplace. Let's see, got lost here. Let me go back to primary scene. Cool. And then this is the structure of this building. So these scenes are really helpful for whoever is going to be constructing it. I worked really closely with a structural engineer on these projects, and we saved a ton of time just popping into the model, having some Zoom calls, and showing him exactly what I want to do. Let's see. All right, so there's that one. And then I will show you the third and final building of the project, which is the Pavilion. I'm just going to do a quick fly through. Yeah, so patio with a dining room table and a grill. It's got a wood burning fire pit, and then these louver doors slide open on a barn door track slider, depending on if you want shade or you want sun. So being in the desert, if you can keep things in the shade throughout the heat of the summer, throughout the day, they will stay cool. And simultaneously, if you let the sun warm a surface, it's going to stay warm throughout the whole day. So Moab is in climate zone 5B, which is the same as Colorado. Gets a lot of snow and it gets a lot of sun. I would say it's just different in terms of the temperature swings. So they're more dramatic. They happen much faster. Again, this is all sandstone and sand in terms of the geology. So there's not a lot of thermal mass here with the environment itself. So yeah, that's the Pavilion. And then now I'm going to show you the context model. So this is the model where it's where I hold the site, and I will bring in all those three buildings into it. This model gets quite complex in terms of geometry. These are big files, and yeah, I'm maxing out the processing power of my computer, but so far it's worked just fine. So anyway, in terms of my workflow, each one of these buildings is its own central model. They all have their own drawing sets. So three PDFs is what is exported at the end of the day. Hand those all to the contractor, and away he goes. And then the context model would be really helpful for rendering processing. And then for me, it's actually a design tool to figure out where my views are and the building orientation and lining up these buildings with each other. So yeah, let me fly you through the context model. So this is a orthographic projection of the SketchUp model. This is all SketchUp. Those are all surveyed contours that we did end up getting. We got a LiDAR survey from a drone on this project, and it was pretty accurate. So overlaid the civil engineering plans, and then I have actually done a lot of the grading myself. A lot of civil plans, if you leave it up to them, it might be a little bit rigid in terms of cut fill and the landforms that are created. So I like to smooth things out, and I want the land and the buildings to have a seamless transition. So here we are. I have all the rock work modeled there. That's just simple SketchUp sandbox tools. Took a little bit for it to process, maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And now I have a topography mesh that I can use throughout the whole life of the project. Also draped over all the roads and the hydrology. And then, there was quite a bit of grading involved with the contour lines and getting that right. So, kind of fine tuning the grades around the buildings. And a little tip, probably most of the people in this room know, but if you are doing architecture and you bring in some site work into your model, it's going to make it look 10 times better. Context is everything. So yeah, shadows tend to bog this thing down a little bit. I'm sure you guys have all experienced that before. And, this is the phase where I'm about to drop it into Twinmotion or one of those other programs that can process a lot faster and smooth things out quite a bit. But this is all native SketchUp. I would say love working in this way. Having kind of a SketchUp illustrative view like this is exciting to me. And then the photorealism is the next layer of what comes. So yeah, all these buildings are lined up perfectly with each other. So that's the pavilion that we're looking at beyond through the flyway. It's like an aperture, and then we're also capturing that rock outcropping beyond. And all these things I was able to line it up straight as an arrow. So every one of these buildings is within a degree of the highest point of these rock outcroppings. And again, this is the shop looking out. Let's see, a little bit of lag. But yeah, showing your clients this, it just knocks their socks off. This is what they want to see. And they don't understand 2D construction documents, a lot of them, and it's really hard to visualize what it is that they're looking at. So this is a way to fly them through, show them, hey, this is what your building's going to look like. And man, I've seen it done so many times before where that step is missed and it's built, and the client wants to change things because they don't like board form concrete. And I was actually talking to a guy from Jade Mountain Builders. Russ, if you're here, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We were both on a project together in South Carolina, and that's exactly what happened. And man, that was millions of dollars that could have been saved for this particular project just by visualizing it in 3D space. Let's see. All right. So that is my context model, which brings me to my conclusion. All right, here we are. This is today. Actually, we're a little bit beyond this, but the owner is doing a bunch of site work. He's done almost all of the grading for the project. He's laying out his irrigation field right now, redoing all the plumbing for irrigation. These are drone views. Again, here's that rim. There's the Moab rim in the background. This is that pond that he had just flooded. And yeah, it's exciting. We're about to really break ground on this thing. So yeah, and then final view, you've seen that. This is the site, which brings me to Q&A. And thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys. You're welcome to follow me. My handle on Instagram is @Sexton.studio. So hope to see you there.